In session 1 of module 5, I will present the nature and scope of public finance. To begin with, the concept of public finance and its meaning. According to Findley Shiraz, public finance is the study of the principle underlying the spending and raising of funds by public authorities. Carl Fenn regards public finance as the science which deals with the activity of the statesman in obtaining and applying the material means necessary for fulfilling the proper functions to the state. According to Dalton, public finance is concerned with the income and expenditure of public authorities and with the adjustment of the one to the other. It is a branch of economics which deals with income and expenditure of government of a country. The function of public authorities are simply revenue raising and revenue spending for covering the cost of administration and defense in the days of early economists. But modern states have to perform various functions to promote the welfare of the people. Therefore, the public finance includes the study of financial administration as well as of financial control. According to Professor Bastable, public finance is a branch of economics which deals with income and expenditure of public authorities or the state and their mutual relation, as also with the financial administration and control. Scope of public finance. The scope of public finance covers a full discussion of the influence of government's fiscal operations at the level of overall activity, employment, prices, and growth process of the economic system as a whole. Professor Taylor states, public finance deals only with the finances of government, include the raising and disbursement of government funds. According to Musgrave, the scope of public finance embraces the three important functions of the government: budgetary policy confined to the fiscal department. 1. The allocation branch. 2. The distribution branch. 3. The stabilization branch. These refer to three objectives of the budgetary policy, that is, the use of fiscal instruments. 1. To secure adjustments in the allocation of resources. 2. To secure adjustments in the distribution of income and wealth. And 3. To secure economic stability. The scope of public finance may be divided into four parts. One is public revenue. Second, public expenditure. Third, public debt. And fourth, financial administration. Distinction between private and public finance. Public finance is used for the benefit of the people of an economy, while the private finance is used for the benefit of an individual or his family. Public finance and the private finance are differentiated as mentioned here. Difference between private and public finance. 1. Adjustment of income and expenditure. A government first prepares an estimate of expenditure and then means to raise that sum, and an individual must adjust his expenditure to his income. 2. Budgeting. The unit for the public budget is 1 year, but an individual does not balance his budget during a given period. 3. Deficit financing. Deficit financing is a particular privilege of government, but an individual cannot do it unless he is prepared to go behind the bars. 4. Different objectives. An individual tries to maximize his satisfaction or profit from a given amount of resources, but the objective of the government expenditure is to maximize social benefit. 5. Publicity of finance. Governments are published and the widest publicity is given to them. On the other hand, the secrecy surrounds individual finance. Public goods versus private goods. Examples of public goods. There are relatively few examples of pure public goods. To name few examples of public goods, which include flood control systems, some of the broadcasting services, public water supplies, street lighting for roads, and motorways, lighthouse protection for ships, and also national defense services. The characteristics of pure public goods are non-excludability. The benefits derived from the provision of pure public goods cannot be confined to only those who have actually paid for it. In this sense, non-payers can enjoy the benefits of consumption at no financial cost to themselves. This is known as the free rider problem. And it means that people have a temptation to consume without paying. Non-rival consumption. Consumption of a public good by one person does not reduce the availability of a good to everyone else. Therefore, we all consume the same amount of public goods, even though our tastes and preferences for these goods might differ. A private good or service has three main characteristics. One is excludability. Consumers of private goods can be excluded from consuming the product by the seller if they are not willing or able to pay for it. For example, a ticket to the theater or a meal in a restaurant is clearly a private good. Another example is the increasing use of pay-per-view as a means of extracting payment from people wanting to watch exclusive coverage of sporting events on television, or the payment required to travel on a toll road or toll bridge. Another example of a private good is the use of subscription-based services on the internet. Excludability gives the service provider the chance to make a profit from producing and selling the product. As we shall see, with public goods, such excludability does not exist. When goods are excludable, the owners can exercise property rights. 2. Rivalry. With a private good, one person's consumption of a product reduces the amount left for others to consume and benefit from, because scarce resources are used up in producing and supplying the good or service. If you order and then enjoy a pizza from Pizza Hut, that pizza is no longer available to someone else. Likewise, driving your car on a road uses up a road space that is no longer available at that time to another motorist. The greater the volume of traffic on the roads, the higher the likelihood of traffic congestion, which has the effect of reducing the average speed and increasing the average journey time for each road user. 3. Rejectability. Private goods and services can be rejected. If you do not like the soup on the college or school menu, you can use your money to buy something else, or you can choose not to buy a season ticket for your local soccer club and instead use the money to finance a subscription to a local health club. All private goods and services can be rejected by the final consumer should their tastes and preferences change. Now I would like to move on to the principle of maximum social advantage. The principle of maximum social advantage, which is popularly known as MSA, is the fundamental principle of public finance. The principle of maximum social advantage states that public finance leads to economic welfare when public expenditure and taxation are carried out up to that point where the benefits derived from the marginal utility of expenditure is equal to the marginal disutility or the sacrifice imposed by taxation. Dalton explains the principle of maximum social advantage with reference to 1. Marginal social sacrifice, 2. Marginal social benefits. This principle is, however, based on the following assumptions. 1. All taxes result in sacrifice and all public expenditures lead to benefits. 2. Public revenue consists of only taxes and no other sources of income to the government. 3. The government has no surplus or deficit budget but only balanced budget. 4. Public expenditure is the subject to diminishing marginal social benefit and taxes are subject to increasing marginal social sacrifice. Marginal social sacrifice, MSS. Marginal social sacrifice refers to that amount of social sacrifice undergone by public due to the imposition of an additional unit of tax. Every unit of tax imposed by the government taxes result in loss of utility. Dalton says that the additional burden resulting from additional units of taxation goes on increasing. That is, the total social sacrifice increases at an increasing rate. This is because when taxes are imposed, the stock of money with the community diminishes. As a result of diminishing stock of money, the marginal utility of money goes on increasing. Eventually, every additional unit of taxation creates greater amount of impact and greater amount of sacrifice on the society. That is why the marginal social sacrifice goes on increasing. The diagram indicates that the marginal social sacrifice curve rises upwards from left to right. This indicates that with each additional unit of taxation, the level of sacrifice also increases. When the unit of taxation was OM1, the marginal social sacrifice was OS1. And with the increase in taxation at OM2, the marginal social sacrifice raises to OS2. Marginal social benefit, MSB. While imposition of a tax puts burden on the people, public expenditure confers benefits. The benefit conferred on the society by an additional unit of expenditure is known as marginal social benefit. Just as the marginal utility from a commodity to a consumer declines as more and more units of the commodity are made available to him, the social benefit from each additional unit of public expenditure declines as more and more units of public expenditure are spent. In the beginning, the units of public expenditure are spent on the most essential social activities. Subsequent doses of public expenditure are spent on less and less important social activities. As a result, the curve of marginal social benefits slopes downwards from left to right as shown in the figure. In the diagram, the marginal social benefit MSB curve slopes downwards from left to right. This indicates that the social benefit derived out of public expenditure is reducing at a diminishing rate. When the public expenditure was OM1, the marginal social benefit was OB1. And when the public expenditure is OM2, the marginal social benefit is reduced at OB2. The point of maximum social advantage. Social advantage is maximized at the point where marginal social sacrifice cuts the marginal social benefit curve, that is, at the point of P. At this point, the marginal disutility or social sacrifice is equal to the marginal utility or social benefit. Beyond this point, the marginal disutility or social sacrifice will be higher, and the marginal utility or social benefit will be lower. At point P, social advantage is maximum. Now consider point 1. At this point, marginal social benefit is P1Q1. This is greater than marginal social sacrifice S1Q1. Since the marginal social sacrifice is lower than the marginal social benefit, it makes more sense to increase the level of taxation and public expenditure. This is due to the reason that additional unit of revenue raised and spent by the government leads to increase in the net social advantage. This situation of increasing taxation and public expenditure continues as long as the level of taxation and expenditure are towards the left of the point P. At point P, the level of taxation and public expenditure moves up to OQ. At this point, the marginal utility or social benefit becomes equal to marginal disutility or social sacrifice. Therefore, at this point, the maximum social advantage is achieved. At point P2, the marginal social sacrifice S2Q2 is greater than marginal social benefit P2Q2. Therefore, beyond the point P, any further increase in the level of taxation and public expenditure may bring down the social advantage. This is because each subsequent unit of additional taxation will increase the marginal disutility or social sacrifice, which will be more than marginal utility or social benefit. This shows that maximum social advantage is attained only at point P, and this is the point where marginal social benefit of public expenditure is equal to the marginal social sacrifice of taxation. Marginal social advantage is achieved at the point where the marginal social benefit of public expenditure and the marginal social sacrifice of taxation are equated. That is where MSB is equal to MSS. This shows that to obtain maximum social advantage, the public expenditure should be carried up to the point where the marginal social benefit of the last rupee or dollar spent becomes equal to the marginal social sacrifice of the last unit of rupee or dollar taxed. Market failure, an economic term that encompasses a situation where in any given market the quantity of a product demanded by consumers does not equate to the quantity supplied by the suppliers. This is a direct result of lack of certain economically ideal factors which prevents equilibrium. A market is an exchange institution that serves society by organizing economic activity. Market use prices to communicate the wants and limits of a diffuse and diverse society so as to bring about coordinated economic decisions in the most efficient manner. Market work well when prices reflect all values. Market failure occurs when some costs and or benefits are not fully reflected in market price. For environmental assets, market can fail if prices do not communicate society's desire and constraints accurately. Price often understate the full range of services provided by an asset or do not exist to send a signal to the marketplace about the value of asset. Market failure occurs when private decisions based on these prices or lack of them do not generate an efficient allocation of resources. Efficiency is defined as Pareto optimality, the impossibility of reallocating resources to make one person better off without making anyone else worse off. The market system fails to function properly when many kinds of environmental goods, because such resources include the services they provide, are often not traded in market. Market failure can occur due to any or all of the following: lack of property rights or weak property rights, public goods or common property characteristics, externalities and asymmetric information, weakness of the free market economy. The very basic problem with a free market economy is that it is based on greed, not need. Free trade agreements, they are usually far from that. The bigger country gets open access and often even more market share without the smaller country getting commensurate treatment and markets in the bigger country. Level playing field. There is no such thing in a free market economy. The stronger economy tilts the playing field in its favor and ensures that the weaker is playing up a slope or kicking into the wind, together with an umpire biased against it. Role of the government. Stabilization and growth. Perhaps most importantly, the government guides the overall pace of economic activity, attempting to maintain steady growth, high levels of employment, and price stability. By adjusting spending and tax rates or managing the money supply and controlling the use of credit, of course through monetary policy, it can slow down or speed up the economy's rate of growth in the process, affecting the level of prices and employment. For many years following the Great Depression of the 1930s, recessions, periods of slow economic growth and high unemployment were viewed as the greatest of economic threats. When the danger of a recession appeared most serious, governments sought to strengthen the economy by spending heavily itself or cutting taxes so that consumers would spend more, and by fostering rapid growth in the money supply, which also encouraged more spending. In the 1970s, major price increases, particularly for energy, created a strong fear of inflation. Increases in the overall level of prices. As a result, government leaders came to concentrate more on controlling inflation than on combating recession by limiting spending, resisting tax cuts. and reining in growth in the money supply. Ideals about the best tools for stabilizing the economy changed substantially between the 1960s and the 1990s. A period of high inflation, high unemployment, and huge government deficits weakened confidence in fiscal policy as a tool for regulating the overall pace of economic activity. Instead, monetary policy controlling the nation's money supply through such devices as interest rates assumed growing prominence. Monetary policy is directed by the nation's central bank, known as the Reserve Bank of India. With the considerable independence to evolve its policy frame from time to time. I would now like to present in a summary form about what has already been discussed. The public finance is concerned with the income and expenditure of public authorities and with the adjustment of one to the other. The scope of public finance embraces the following three functions of the government's budgetary policy confined to the fiscal department: the allocation, the distribution, and the stabilization. Public finance is used for the benefit of the people of an economy, while the private finance is used for the benefit of an individual or his family. The principle of maximum social advantage states that public finance leads to economic welfare when public expenditure and taxation are carried out up to the point where the benefits derived from the marginal utility of expenditure is equal to the marginal disutility or the sacrifice imposed by taxation. The benefit conferred on the society by an additional unit of public expenditure is known as marginal social benefit. Maximum social advantage is achieved at the point where the marginal social benefit of public expenditure and the marginal social sacrifice of taxation are equated. That is where MSB is equal to MSS. Market failure occurs when some costs or benefits are not fully reflected in market price. Market failure can occur due to any or all of the following: lack of or weak property rights, public goods or common property characteristics, externalities, asymmetric information, and weakness of the free market economy. Modern governments, by adjusting spending and tax rates, are managing the money supply and controlling the use of credit through monetary policy. It can slow down or speed up the economy's rate of growth in the process, affecting the level of prices and employment.